Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:56 on a Friday night. Welcome to the 556.com, to georgiagunlawyers.com. My name is Matt Kilgo. I'm an attorney in Marietta, Georgia. I'm a gun enthusiast, we'll say, and a majority of my practice centers around firearms. Now, with me tonight, as always, is my producer, Mariana Wegener. You'll see her right there. She's going to be running the videos for us. This is a first for us. We've normally done these as go-to webinars, and it's been kind of hard to get folks signed in and registered, so we figured, what the heck, we might as well totally embarrass ourselves and go out to the entire planet on Facebook Live. John Krasinski, I hope you're watching. So let's, as they say, do a little small talk before we get started. Initially, we were going to do a webinar tonight. We were going to have Lana Four, who is the regional director for U.S. Law Shield, come on tonight. We're going to talk about use of force. Unfortunately, Lana had a death in the family, and so I'd like to remember Lana and offer our prayers and thoughts to her. Lana and her husband Mike and her daughter Kayla LaFan. Lana's son-in-law passed away last week, so we remember her and we pray for her and for her family and her grandchildren, and hope to see her again very soon. There's been a lot going on in the news in the past week. I'm sure all of you have heard about Ahmaud Arbery's case down in Glenn County in Brunswick, Georgia. I was actually interviewed for Vice News about that a couple days ago, and so I expect that'll be out soon. It's a tragic event, and I think because of the way that we're all sort of isolated and we don't have anything else to occupy our time, I think it's really been explosive that we have something like this happen. And obviously with the advent of the video, the GBI is taking over the investigation almost immediately. These two gentlemen were arrested approximately 8:30 p.m. last night and charged with aggravated assault and murder. So it's going to be something that we all very closely watch, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Tonight we are going to talk about what to do to stay on the right side of the law. Now, so many folks are new gun owners, and as new gun owners, they're going in, they're buying firearms, and hopefully they're getting some training. And they do need practical training about using a firearm and how to stand and how to point it and what to do and how to reload and how to clean your firearm. But just as important are the legal underpinnings of the use of a firearm. What can you do to protect yourself and your family? How should you best accomplish that? And once you've done it, what do you do to protect yourself after you have protected yourself? So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to run through a brief little presentation that I like to do with some of the classes on use of force that I teach. But I think first, Mariana, what we should do is we'll go to our man in the street. We went out to Georgia Firing Line, which is a fantastic gun range and firearms store in Cobb County here in Marietta, Georgia, a couple of days ago. And we ran into some friends. Later on in the week, next week, we're going to publish an interview that we did with Getty Wilson, who is their marketing director and one of their firearms instructors, a fantastic individual. But we also ran into a friend of mine named Rob Burnett. And Rob is a transplant, like most of us in Georgia. I tell folks that there are only two people that I know for sure are true Georgians. It's my two sons, because I saw it when it happened at Northside Hospital. So Rob, like everyone else, is a transplant. He's originally from Washington State. The gun laws are a little different in Washington State, but Rob's very much an outdoorsman. He's a fisher. He's a hunter. And we ran into him the other day, and what I wanted to do was to ask him some questions, just some off-the-cuff, haven't been rehearsed questions that are questions I get a lot from the normal every person on the street. Questions about how you can carry, where you can carry, and what you have to do so that we can address some of the myths and the misconceptions. So Rob, if you're listening now, thank you for being our guinea pig. We're going to start with a couple of questions. The first question is going to be this: what are the rules for defending yourself in your home? So we'll play the video. Go ahead and obviously send in questions if you have questions, and then I'd like to key a little bit off of what Rob said so we can dispel any myths or misconceptions and make the right informed decisions. So let's play that first video. Hello folks, we are back. This is Matt Kilgo with the 556.com and Georgia Gun Lawyers. We're going to do a little bit of a man on the street. And full disclosure, I know this man on the street. I've known him for a long time. We're scouting friends, we're fishing friends. If you ever need someone to take you fishing in Washington State, this is the guy to do it.
Okay.
His name is Rob Burnett. Rob, you are an outdoorsman, you're a dad, and you're a gun owner. Tell us a little bit about your firearms and what your setup is.
My setup, I didn't grow up with guns. This is something that's fairly new to me. It's just pretty much been all information from friends, going online, looking about stuff. But basically, I've got some stuff for hunting, both for deer, hog, and then I've got a couple of handguns
to come defense.
Guns
to come defense.
For home defense, yep, and plinking at the range.
Okay. Now, Rod didn't know we were going to put him up to this today, so this has not been pre-planned.
Raw.
Very raw. But I want to talk with you a little bit about self-defense. So many people have perceptions that they feel like, well, this is what the law is, but in fact, it's a little bit different. So I want to ask you just some basic self-defense questions and see how you would respond, and then later on, we're going to go online and talk about you.
And see how bad my answers are. But hey, let's make it raw.
Does that sound like a plan?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get started. All right, stop us there. All right, I'm back on. So our first question is going to be the rules for defending yourself in your home. And what I asked Rob is, what does he feel like he can do? Can he shoot outside the home and then drag the body in? If he's standing in the middle of his home and someone enters the home, what are the best rules and the best ways to effectuate personal defense inside the home? Do we have that video? All right, let's go. Ready? All right, Rob, I got 4 questions for you. And this is question number 1. What do you believe the rules for defending yourself in your home are? What can you do to defend yourself and your family in your home?
Okay, without getting in trouble, would be that...
Staying out of trouble.
Staying out of trouble so that I don't... Well, I'm going to have to call you. I pull the trigger, I have to call you no matter what, whether I'm right or wrong.
He's correct, folks.
I would say that I have to have... It's got to be life-threatening. There's got to be a situation that I feel that my family or myself are in immediate danger, loss of life.
Okay.
If he's got his back turned to me in my home.
The bad guy would be.
The bad guy. If the bad guy has his back turned to me in my home and he's holding my TV set, my thought is I'd get in trouble if I pulled the trigger.
That's a great answer. All right, well, let's move to question number 2. I'm going to give you a scenario. Yep. All right, so we're back on. That was a fantastic first question from Rob, or first answer from Rob. It was a fantastic first question also. So what he says is that, he feels like if it's life-threatening, then he can protect himself and his family. And I think he's absolutely correct in that regard. Now, there are 3 separate scenarios when we're dealing with the habitation: our home, our car, or our place of business. So these 3 scenarios would apply both in the home, in the car, and in our place of business. And one of the most important ones deals with life-threatening situations. In Georgia, you're justified in using deadly force, that force intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm. Number 1, when entry or the attempted entry to your home or your habitation is made, and that entry or attempted entry is what we call violent and tumultuous. Busting in the front door, breaking a window, trying violently somehow to get into the home. And if you have a reasonable belief that you must act to prevent violence inside the home, then you're justified in using deadly force. So I think Rob is right on track here. He said, if it's life-threatening, well, that's true. If it's a reasonable belief that you must act to prevent death or great bodily injury, that's the general use of deadly force. Inside the home, if that attempted entry or the entry itself is violent and tumultuous and you must act to prevent death or great bodily injury or to prevent violence, then you're justified in the use of deadly force. And as I tell my classes, that doesn't mean you have to wait till the bad guy gets into the home. If they're attempting to break down the door, you can go ahead and defend yourself before they come in. But keep in mind, it's one thing to defend yourself and your home and your family as they're attempting to come in the door. If they're down the stairs, that adds a level of complexity. If they're in the front yard, an even greater level of complexity. There is a case in Georgia that says you can't just shoot a criminal trespasser. So the facts are going to have to evolve as to whether this person was a trespasser standing 20 feet away from your door, or if they're actually intending on entering the home to do harm. If they're pounding on the door with a crowbar, a bat, or a sledgehammer, trying to kick the door in or break a window, completely different set of facts. So every situation is going to be dependent on those specific facts, but as a first response, that was a fantastic answer. Now that's the first scenario in which you can protect yourself in your habitation. The second one is if force is used against someone not a member of your family who has unlawfully and forcibly entered your home, or you have some reason to believe has unlawfully and forcibly entered your home. That would be middle of the night, you're lying in bed, you wake up, someone's in your bedroom. You don't know who they are, you're supposed to be alone. If they're not a member of your family, then obviously you could protect yourself. And if they were a member of your family, you could still protect yourself if you had a reason to believe you had to do so to protect yourself from death or great bodily injury. Question?
Yes, we have a couple questions.
All right, let's go to a question.
So Walter would like to know, if someone enters your home, enters through an unlocked door, but does not appear to be harmful yet, are you able to hold a gun at the low ready while you're on the phone with police?
That's a great question, Walter. So the question is, if someone's entered your home, you're not quite sure if they're a threat yet, but they have entered without your permission, can you hold a firearm at low ready while you're calling police? And I think you absolutely can do that. Remember, as I just said, you're justified in using deadly force when force is used against someone not a member of your family or household. So Walter, if you see this bad guy enter the back door, they've used some level of force to obtain entry to your home. If you don't know who they are and you haven't invited them in, there's a supposition there that they're there for no good, and depending on those circumstances, you absolutely could hold a firearm at low ready to protect yourself, because in that scenario, if you're not sure what's going to happen, it's entirely likely for you to believe that you must protect yourself from whoever this bad guy is. You also can protect yourself by the use of even deadly force in your home if you have a reasonable belief that that individual has entered your home to commit a felony. Now, if the person walking through your back door is the mailman or the mailwoman, the mail person, and they've got a box in their hands, oh, Mr. Walter, Mr. Nine, I saw that your door was open. I just wanted to put this on the table. Well, that's one thing. Maybe the mail person shouldn't do that. But if it's someone who walks in with a hammer in one hand and a set of lockpicks in the other, is it reasonable for you to believe that that person may have entered to commit a felony? I would say yes. That could be burglary. It could be a theft. They could be there to harm you and then take their time taking what they wanted. So it's going to be dependent on those facts, but I think in that limited set of facts that you've given us, I think absolutely you could do that. We have another question.
We do.
All right.
All right, we have a question from Cindy. She would like to know, violent or tumultuous entry? What if the bad guy comes in through an unlocked door or window?
So Cindy's question is violent and tumultuous entry. What if the bad guy comes in through an unlocked door? Well, I think even an unlocked door is going to provide you with the ability to protect yourself. Now, most of us lock our doors, but to be quite honest, sometimes we just forget. If I have to leave the back door unlocked to make sure that I put the grill away for the night, sometimes I forget. Obviously, I'm never going to do that now because I just told the internet that I forgot to lock my back door. If that individual has come into your home, maybe it's not violent and tumultuous entry. Now, just because it doesn't fit the first level or the first use of force doesn't mean that it wouldn't fit under either of the other two. So they've entered, that person's not a member of your family, and you know or should have reason to believe they've unlawfully and forcibly entered. And again, they've had to use some force to obtain entry into the home. They didn't walk through a gaping hole in the wall. They walked through a door that they opened. So there's some level of force that had to be used to open up that door. Additionally, you're in the home, this person walks in. If you have a reasonable belief, just as in the last scenario, that they've entered to commit a felony, it doesn't have to be forcible entry. You know, not every unlawful entry to your home is loud and forcible like that. Sometimes it's as easy as trying a door to see if they can get in. And if that's the case, they're in your house, up to no good, there to burglarize your home, there to take something that doesn't belong to him or to her. In that scenario, you'd still be justified in protecting yourself and protecting your home by the use of deadly force? That's a fantastic question, Cindy. Thank you for asking. Do we have any more questions, or are we ready to go?
We can go on to the next card.
All right. So I do want to address one thing that Rob said in this answer. He said, if the fella's got his back turned to me, I don't think that that's a good situation to be in, and I probably wouldn't shoot. I think that's probably Rob answering out of the fact that he's genuinely a good guy. I've heard many firearms instructors. I myself have heard Masada Ayub, who's a very famous firearms instructor, say, look, in the time it takes you to pull the trigger, if I want to get out of your house, my back's already turned. My response has always been, if this person's in your home, no matter if he's facing you, facing another person, facing your kitchen, he can still potentially harm you or harm your family. So while this person is in your home, if the facts fit your justified use of deadly force, go ahead and protect yourself and protect your family. Now, if the bad guy gets out the back door, across the deck, down the stairs, across the yard, and is halfway up the back fence, that's not the time to shoot. Because I think what you'll find is even a police officer in that regard could not use deadly force unless he or she had reason to believe that this gentleman still possessed a weapon and was a danger to the community. So he lives to fight another day in that scenario. But as long as that person's in your house, you have options to protect yourself and to protect your family. So fantastic questions from the audience, fantastic answer from Rob. Let's go to question number 2, which is not so much a question as it is a scenario. We're going to give Rob the classic gas pump scenario. You're pumping gas, you go to pay, you turn around, and someone's about to drive away with your car. What do you do? Let's hit it.
You ready? All right, Rob, I got 4 questions for you. And this is question number 1. What do you believe the rules for defending yourself in your home are? What can you do to defend yourself and your family in your home?
Okay, without getting in trouble, would be that
Staying out of trouble.
staying out of trouble so that I don't, I'm going to have to call you. I pull the trigger, I have to call you no matter what, whether I'm right or wrong.
He's correct, folks.
I would say that I have to have, it's got to be life-threatening. There's got to be a situation that I feel that my family or myself are in immediate danger, loss of life.
Okay.
If he's got his back turned to me in my home,
Usually the bad guy would be.
the bad guy, if the bad guy has his back turned to me in my home and he's holding my TV set, my thought is I'd get in trouble if I pulled the trigger.
That's a great answer. All right, well, let's move to question number 2. I'm going to give you a scenario more than a question. You're at the gas pump. You hop out of the car. You leave the car running, which you're not supposed to do, but you do it anyway. Doesn't matter what your wife says. I'm speaking from experience now. You're pumping gas. You turn around, and when you turn back towards your car, there's somebody trying to drive away in your car. You're carrying a firearm. What can you do to stop that guy from driving away in your car?
Well, if he's trying to drive away in the process, I'll probably wave, take out my phone, and call 911 or whatever, report my call stolen. If he's in the process of getting in the car, I'm not a small guy, so I feel like if I said, hey, buddy, what the hell are you doing? That will hopefully begin to de-escalate he run away based on his next action. If he continues to I will probably come around the vehicle. If he still continues, I would draw my firearm. If he and just draw and address him again, and then take and see how he responds. I think the only time I would draw and fire would be if he is coming at me, engages with me. As long as he's just engaging with the car, I'm probably not going to take his life. But if he comes in and wants to engage with me, and I'm feeling immediately threatened, I feel like to fire would be justified.
Good answer. Very good answer. All right, number 3.
All right. I got to tell you, those answers are not staged. Rob was shooting from the hip there, so to speak. But I got to be honest with you, an answer like that, he hopefully will never need my services. It's a very good balance between the principle and the practical. You know, the principle is we don't want to take the life of another human being, but we want to protect ourselves. Now, when we're talking about defensive habitation, Cars are included. Automobiles are included because that is part of your habitation, where you live, where you work, and how you get to where you live and work. Those three places are considered your habitation, which means you have enhanced rights, I would say, to protect yourself and your family in those locations. It's one thing to be in your car and someone attempting to get in. It's another thing if you're outside of your car and you're watching someone attempt to get in. I have, and this is anecdotal evidence, but I recall from about 5 years ago, a case in Fulton County where the Fulton County DA's office prosecuted a man for murder for this exact scenario where he was outside his car, shooting into his car as the bad guy tried to drive away. And I have a list of about 20, 25 attorneys who assist me statewide in addressing firearms issues. Again, I'm an attorney for U.S. Law Shield, and as part of that, I cover the entire state as their program attorney, and sometimes I need help in different parts of the state. I sent out an email, just an email chain, a discussion, if you will, among these lawyers. What do you think, justified or murder? And we couldn't agree. But I think the one thing that we could agree on is if this individual, if the DA wanted to prosecute him, absolutely. And I don't know what happened with that case. It's been hard to follow it because I didn't know the driver's name. But I think the goal here that Rob has very well achieved is the principle of self-protection and balancing that with a practical answer. Look, things are things and things can be replaced. That's why we have insurance. So it may run counter to my economic good for me to tell you this, but if a bad guy's going to take your car and you're in a position to report that to the police and you know what your tag number is and your insurance company is going to get involved, even if you're carrying a firearm, I don't know if it's the best response to just start blasting away. You know, if you're not in a position where you're actually threatened, things can be replaced. People can't be replaced. And that, I think, that's a principled and a practical approach. You know, would the law give you some ability to protect your possessions in that regard? Yes, I believe some. I think it's a very gray area of the law. So I think Rob's response is spot on if you want to stay on the right side of the law and be a human being, which is, look, things are okay. Now, if this fella addresses me, I'm going to say, look, friend, I'm totally able to protect myself. And you can use the threats of force. Look, I've got a firearm. Force, kicking, slapping, punching, biting, and even deadly force if you have a reasonable belief that your life or the life of another person is jeopardized. So what Rob has given us is a tiered response that is a practical response. The law does not require us to use any tiered response. As long as we're justified in the use of deadly force, we can stand our ground and use that deadly force. But I think what he's done is he's done a great job of mixing, you know, what he knows about the law, and let's face it, he and I have talked about the law before. What he's taken a basic understanding of the law and applied it to himself as a human being and the way that he lives his life. So I think it's a fantastic answer. Let's go quickly to question number 3. And question number 3 is more of a basics of criminal law question. We talk about the difference between theft, or I ask him if he knows the difference between theft and burglary and robbery. So let's go to that and see what he says.
You ready? All right, Rob, I got 4 questions for you. And this
hopefully begin to de-escalate he run away based on his next action. If he continues to I will probably come around the vehicle. If he still continues, I would draw my firearm. If he and just draw and address him again and then take and see how he responds. I think the only time I would draw and fire would be if he is coming at me, engages with me. As long as he's just engaging with the car, I'm probably not going to take his life. But if he comes in and wants to engage with me and I'm feeling immediately threatened, I feel like to fire would be justified.
Good answer. Very good answer. All right, number 3. Do you know the difference between theft, burglary, and robbery? Meaning, could you tell us the difference? Give us an example of the differences between theft, robbery, and burglary.
Well, let me butcher this one. I just know this is kind of where you're taking the test and you just write Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So you put some down. Let's see. I assume that burglary does not involve force.
Okay.
Theft. Oh, robbery. I just assume robbery involves theft, damage, and force.
Okay.
It was burglary, theft, and robbery.
Right.
Theft and robbery I've always kind of thrown into the same category. So
Okay.
I have no idea.
A lot of people do that, and I'll do a voiceover at some point addressing this. That's a good one. Last. All right, another great answer from Rob. You know, these are very closely related concepts, and you know, it's one of my, I guess, my nerd lawyer pet peeves is if someone were to say, "Well, yeah, I was standing on the street corner and somebody came up and burglarized me," or "Yeah, I was in my house, my house got robbed." I'm like, no, that's not the way that works. So Rob's very close to the basic textbook answers there. I think we start with theft, and a theft could be either a misdemeanor or felony. Misdemeanor meaning that you could go to jail for up to 12 months and be fined up to $1,000, and felony meaning anything from a year onward. But there's a dividing line, and the theft is the taking of something that doesn't belong to you, or being in control of something that doesn't belong to you and failing to return it to its proper owner. And there are various shades of theft in Georgia, but the basic thought or the basic concept is the taking of something with the intent to deprive the owner of that property. And if that property has a value of less than $1,500, the law actually changed it 2 years ago. It used to be $500. But if that property has a value of less than $1,500, it's a misdemeanor. If it's more than $1,500, it's a theft. So theft could be something as simple as leaving your phone on a table in a restaurant, and you go to the bathroom, and when you come back, your phone is gone. That actually could even be considered robbery, I think, under the right circumstances. Theft could be handing your phone to the waiter and saying, "Hey, would you hold this for me while I go to the restroom?" You come back from the restroom, and the waiter and your phone are gone. Well, now you've given the phone to the waiter, so he had the right to possess the phone at that point, but then he deprived you of it by leaving with the intent to keep it for himself. So that's theft. Now, robbery and burglary are a little different. Both are what we call forcible felonies, which have some level of physical force against the person within them. Robbery typically deals with what I would say is a face-to-face transaction. You can have armed robbery, which is the attempt to deprive someone by the use of a deadly weapon, or what we call robbery by sudden snatch, which is a snatch and grab robbery. Grabbing the purse and running off with it in a crowded restaurant, or at a MARTA station, or at a football game, or something along those lines. Robbery doesn't necessarily occur in the home. There are some circumstances, I'm sure, where it could. But when we're talking about the home, the habitation, we're talking about burglary. Now, up until about 5 years ago, we just had burglary in Georgia. And burglary is a felony. Robbery is a felony. Burglary about 5 years ago was broken down into various degrees. We don't have many crimes in Georgia that have degrees, but burglary is one of them. So first-degree burglary is when an individual enters with the intent to commit a felony into an occupied or unoccupied dwelling house. So if someone comes into your home with the intent to commit a felony inside, such as a felony theft, this would be where burglary and theft sort of operate hand in hand. The felony becomes the burglary when you come inside the home with the intent to commit a felony or a theft inside it. So that's sort of the difference between the three of those. And I think Rob was pretty much on the right track there. Do we have any questions about any of those?
We do not, but I had a question.
Okay.
We had that case at, was it Lenox Mall?
Your microphone's working, by the way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The case at Lenox Mall. Was it the guy who had, he was being robbed or theft? I don't know. There might have been a weapon involved, but the guy was after his necklace.
Right.
And then a shooting occurred after that. And that would fall under which of these categories? Theft, robbery, not burglary because it's not the home.
Right. So the most
The cleanest definition of robbery would be the definition found in the law. A person commits the offense of robbery with the intent to commit a theft. So it's like burglary in that you intend to commit a theft. You're taking property from another person or the immediate presence of another person by the use of force. So robbery elevates theft by the use of force or by intimidation or what we call by sudden snatch. So in this scenario, if someone were to come up to you and attempt to take that necklace, then that's going to be a robbery. It's going to be by the use of force. It's going to be by sudden snatch. If the bad guy had a pistol or a knife, then that would be armed robbery. And both of these would be forcible felonies that you would be justified in protecting yourself from or preventing. So recall that you're justified in using deadly force when you have a reasonable belief it's necessary to prevent death or great bodily injury, that's number one, or number two, to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. So you can use deadly force to prevent the commission of a robbery, but you couldn't necessarily, I don't know that there's really any scenario, I'm sure there's a scenario, but as a rule, theft is not considered a forcible felony. So a theft alone, I don't believe that you could use deadly force. But a robbery, which is a theft by the use of force, is a forcible felony, which changes the calculus for you in being able to use deadly force to prevent that commission. Now, the example that I often give in the use of force classes that I speak in is that I'm driving my truck, stop at the stop sign, guy jumps out, opens the door, pulls a knife, grabs me by the neck, throws me out of the car. Well, he's entered my auto, which is a felony, but it's not a forcible felony. He has committed an aggravated assault against me because he intends to rob me. He's also committed an aggravated assault by the use of a deadly weapon. He's kidnapped me when he takes me by the use of force and moves me without authority. Does the same thing to my family members in the car. We're all lying in a pile on the sidewalk. Well, as he's driving away, that's when I remember that I'm armed. Can I shoot him as he's driving away? And the answer that I routinely give and that I get from most of my class members is no, because I have failed to prevent the commission of that forcible felony. Now it's a theft. It's a very high dollar theft. It would be a felony theft as long as my truck was worth more than $1,500, and some days I feel like it is. So in that scenario, it's the timing. If I shot him as soon as he opened the door, it's entering auto, but it's not a forcible felony. You pull out the knife, well, then I'm protecting myself from death or great bodily injury, protecting my wife from death or great bodily injury, my sons from death or great bodily injury, and attempting to prevent the forcible felony, which would be the carjacking, or we call it in Georgia, hijacking of a motor vehicle. Another fantastic answer from Rob. I swear this wasn't planned, but he was in the right place at the right time. And he's a really good shot too. So we're going to go to the final question that we have for Rob. And it's a very simple question. It is kind of a pet peeve of mine just because I work in this area so much. Carry permit or weapons carry license? What does Georgia have? So let's go to that footage.
You ready? All right, Rob, I got 4 questions.
Robbery I've always kind of thrown into the same category, so
Okay.
I have no idea.
A lot of people do that, and I'll do a voiceover at some point addressing this. That's a good one. Last question.
Hope I do better.
Carry permit or weapons carry license? What do you think Georgia has?
Carry permit.
And do you need one? Do you have to have one to carry a firearm? You can amend your last answer. You can change your last answer if you want.
In the state of Georgia, do you have to have... Boy, this is where I'm at. Okay, I don't believe Georgia is an open carry state, so I would say yes. In order to carry in the state of Georgia, you have to have a weapons carry permit.
Okay, fantastic. We put him on the spot. He's answered fantastically. We'll do some responses, and I want obviously everyone to send in your own responses to these. Rob, man on the street, thanks a lot. Oh, okay, here we go.
All right, everyone. That's another fantastic answer. And I do want to say Claude Werner said hello. Hey, Claude. We actually, I told you earlier, I sent him a message, Claude, that you were warmly noted in this video, we actually recorded a video with Getty Wilson, the marketing director, one of the instructors at Georgia Firing Line. We're going to put it up next week. Getty mentions you. He's like, oh, Clarksville. I'm like, oh yeah, he's a friend. He's a fan. I'm a fan of his. So be on the lookout for that. Shameless plug. All right, weapons carry license or carry permit. Georgia has a weapons carry license. I answered a question from a young man just today on the phone about this very issue, who asked me, do I need a permit? He said, now I can carry my gun out in public without a permit, but do I need a permit to carry concealed? I'm like, no, you got it all wrong. Georgia used to be that way, but it's been a long time since we have that rule. Here's the rule in Georgia. You have to have a weapons carry license, which covers handguns, and that means semi-automatic pistols and revolvers and knives that have a blade greater than 12 inches when fashioned to a handle and fashioned for the purpose of offense or defense. So for a pocket knife, you don't need a weapons carry license. And up until 2 years ago, anything over 5 inches, you needed a weapons carry license. 5 inches of a knife, by the way, when you were carrying. Now the law is anything less than 12 inches when it comes to the blade of a knife, you don't have to have a weapons carry license. But for pistols, have to have a weapons carry license. Knives that have a blade greater than 12 inches, you have to have a weapons carry license. Nothing beneath that, and obviously none for long guns, which are rifles and shotguns. So Georgia has only one thing. It is a license. Now, what I've always said is that permits to me are permissive. They're regulatory. You can be denied a permit, but you can't be denied a license. And by denied, I mean you have a right to a weapons carry license. Georgia is a shall issue state, which means if you qualify for a weapons carry license, you must be given that weapons carry license. You go to the probate court of the county in which you reside, you pay them their $85, and as long as you qualify, they've got to give it to you. Now, so much of my practice now is assisting individuals who have been denied a weapons carry license. They've applied, and for whatever reason, there's something in their background perhaps that makes it problematic for them to obtain a weapons carry license, or more frequently, the court looks at their background and doesn't understand what's going on, and unfortunately says, well, you know, instead of trying to figure this out, we're just going to deny you, but we're going to give you the opportunity to come in and to prove that you're actually eligible, which I think is the bass-backwards way to do it. But unfortunately, that's how I make my money, is assisting individuals in unraveling that knot. And I do that quite a bit, and it's a satisfying feeling. Now, I'll tell you, so many of us know right now that it's really hard to get a weapons carry license in Georgia because we are under a public health emergency. And that public health emergency went into effect on March 14th. And right at the same time, we went into what is called a judicial emergency. And that judicial emergency was declared by Chief Justice Melton of the Georgia Supreme Court. The Council of Probate Court Judges in Georgia got together, and we have a Council of Probate Court Judges, and they decided what was to be considered essential versus non-essential. And guess what? The maintenance of weapons carry license applications, meaning addressing new license applications and addressing renewals, was not considered essential. So for the most part, you cannot get a new weapons carry license in Georgia right now. You cannot get a renewal. There are some counties that are still processing applications, and they're granting and denying and accepting motions for reconsideration. But by and large, there aren't many counties doing that. And even if the counties were doing it, the biggest problem is that it's hard to find a place that will fingerprint you, because you must be fingerprinted. And unfortunately, that's the way some sheriff's departments are doing an end run around the weapons carry license application. They're saying, oh, you can come in, but we're not going to fingerprint you because of the pandemic. So that's the problem that we're all suffering under right now with respect to our weapons carry license. So what I can say is, most importantly, when you have that opportunity to obtain your weapons carry license, go ahead and get that license and make sure it stays up to date. Now, Georgia gives us a grace period. At any time, 90 days. I'm sure if I've got that wrong, someone's going to write. I'm pretty sure it's 90 days. Don Towers, go ahead and check my math if you can. 90 days before your license expires and up to 30 days after your license expires, you have a grace period where you can come in and obtain a renewal without having to go through the entire process again. Now, what the Council of Probate Court Judges has done is they've said, well, in cases where your license is expiring during the pandemic, your license will continue to be valid, and you just have to wait until we open the courts back up, and then we'll get back into the process of giving you renewals. So if you expire during this period of the pandemic, you're supposed to be okay. I'd be very careful about where I traveled and what I did if my license expired during that time. I'd even go so far, let's say you live in Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County has a fantastic internet interface from their courts, GwinnettCourts.com. Go to the probate court page and print out that header that they have on COVID-19. Have that with you. I think it's a great opportunity for you to be able to supplement the knowledge, because as silly as it may sound, you may wind up with the one police officer in your county who doesn't know that weapons carry licenses have been extended. And however you get into that conversation of having a firearm, and that is a huge topic for another day. Write that down. We're going to use that. If you find yourself in that position, you might want to have that little extra piece of evidence just to help you. And if you don't, guess what? You have a lawyer. So call me. I'll give you my cell phone number. So those were our answers from Rob. I think he did a fantastic job. It's already 6:37. I want to cover just a few more things real quick before we wind up tonight. Now, Mariana, we are going to go live afterward with our recoil after party. So why don't you throw that beautiful footage up there and let everybody know where they can get to us.
There we go.
And then we can show you how we turned my office into a makeshift shantytown production facility. But I think we've done a great job. Mariana's done a great job. We're using a lot of new software. I noticed we had a little bit of problem with the videos. Thank you to everyone for kind of living through reviewing some of those videos or watching repeated clips of those videos. We're using new software. We've got new cameras coming in. What we need is an audience. So if you enjoy this, we're not going to charge for it. Just please send us a note. Hey, thanks for doing this. Here's what I'd like to see in other episodes. Matt, I've got a question. Please use this question online. And tell your friends to come and join us. We want a good following. We want to make this something that we do every week, to the point where I'm seriously considering going on to Facebook Live or Twitch and doing just a lawyer's hour every few days, every 3 or 4 days. Maybe we do a lawyer's hour where we just take questions from folks. But we have to have folks out there to do that. So please consider coming and joining and interacting with us on that. So now what we're going to do real quick, we're just going to run through a little presentation that I use from time to time. You got that presentation we can put up there for everyone? Oh, look, we've even got something scrolling. I can't even see what's on the video right now. But Mariana's running a computer right over here in the corner, and I can
Mike
see
Bange is on.
Oh, Mike Bange is here. Mike Bange, great to see you. Thanks for coming, Mike.
Do you have some questions?
Do we have questions?
Yeah, we sure do.
All right, yeah, let's take a couple of questions, and we'll get into their presentation real quick.
J.R. Oliver wants to know, when is Georgia going to open back up for WCL issuance?
Oh, okay, great, Mr. Oliver. So we did kind of just cover that. What the question was, when is Georgia going to open back up for weapons carry license? And that'll be when the probate courts open back up. And probate courts right now are closed like every other court. We are still, I believe we're awaiting, I believe Justice Melton may have issued the new order today, and I just haven't seen it. I've been a little busy preparing for this little thing that we're doing right now. But we know for a fact that the Supreme Court is extending the judicial emergency until June the 12th. Now, I don't anticipate the Council of Probate Court Judges will come back and say, well, now we've decided to go ahead and let other courthouses, do weapons carry license or renew weapons carry license applications. So expect that as a rule, you won't be able to go in and get a renewal or a new application until at least June the 12th. All indications is that even then, more of the basic routine matters, the regulatory administrative matters of courts will open. Folks, lawyers, we don't think we're going to see jury trials or even grand juries until sometime in August, September, or even October. And this plays into current events. As I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we've all been following, or we are all now following, Ahmaud Arbery's case down in Glenn County, Brunswick, Georgia. And so many people have been asking, well, these guys are still out walking, and I did walking around without having been arrested, and I did see a notation in an article today that someone was upset that they were waiting on they're going to pawn the decision off to the grand jury. Well, folks, you can't just charge someone with murder or aggravated assault. You can accuse them of it. You can get a warrant to arrest them, absolutely. But those types of charges must go through the grand jury process. And the problem with that process right now is that there is no grand jury process. There won't be anything happening until probably August, September, or October. Judge Melton has made the comment that he did not expect that we would bring juries back into courthouses until kids go back to school. Because if you're summoned for jury duty, you're summoned under the penalty of contempt. And he didn't believe it was right to threaten someone with contempt if you don't show up, if we don't have a process in place to protect you. So it's a great question. I think that maybe in June we'll see the courts start to loosen some of these things up, but who knows? What other question do we have?
All right. Let's see. Cindy has a question for us.
Okay, Cindy.
All right. What will be the grace period to get the GWCL renewed if expiring during the break?
So if your weapons carry license does expire during that break, what they've said is that, and the math's a little fuzzy to me. Lawyers aren't this lawyer isn't very good at math. But you have 30 days to apply for a renewal after you've expired. So if you expire during this period of time, then I believe that what they're going to do is just take that date and add 30 days onto it. So it should be, let's say you expire on June the 1st. Which means that you would have to have renewed your license by July the 1st. If the courts don't open back up until July the 12th, then I think at a minimum you're going to have, or June the 12th, then I think at a minimum you're going to have until July the 12th. As I said, Gwinnett County has a really good website for that, and there's some language in there where they actually help you, and the language is a little confusing, but expect that you're going to have at least that period of time. And to be completely honest with you, the practical response would be, right now, everyone's just, Justice Melton has even said in some professionalism remarks that he made, everybody don't be jerks. Be nice to one another, lawyers. Go ahead and agree to continuances. Do what you can to assist one another. So I believe that as we get back into the process, that courthouses are going to be a little more willing to work with you. Just make sure that if we do open back up and you have expired, make sure you get in there within that next 30-day period. And that way you'll know that I think that you're going to be okay. It's a great question. What else do we have?
We have a couple more comments about the Brunswick case.
Brunswick case, great.
So Claude says that the GBI has made the arrest,
yes,
as we have seen today. And let's see, that Cindy says, can they keep them in jail until a grand jury can be convened?
So Cindy's question is a great question. Claude, you're right. They were arrested, I think, last night. As a personal aside, personal comment, I know Vic Reynolds, who's the director of the GBI. He's our former DA in Cobb County. Before that, he was a prominent defense attorney. I've known Vic for 20 years. When I was a prosecutor here in Cobb County, he was a defense attorney. And he's always been fair and even-handed. He was great as a district attorney, and I think he's going to do a great job at protecting the legacy of Ahmaud Arbery's, Mr. Arbery's legacy, and protecting his family and making sure that we receive justice, because these guys still deserve a trial. I know even I have very strong opinions. As I told someone just the other day, I signed the petition to arrest these guys. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but as a lawyer, you can't always separate your professional from your personal beliefs. So I believe something horrible has happened. I believe these men need to be held accountable for it. But I also believe that they need the benefit of the full jury process. Now, what has happened, Cindy, is that an investigator from the GBI has gone to a judge and presented facts to the judge, and based on those facts, asked the judge to issue a warrant. So the judge has said there is probable cause, which is one of the lowest levels of proof we have in the judicial system, to believe that these two gentlemen, I say gentlemen, I use that term very loosely, these two individuals, will say, we shouldn't give them that much credit for being gentlemen. These two individuals have committed a crime. An arrest warrant was issued, and with that warrant, these two individuals were arrested. Now, when you're arrested with a warrant, you have up to 72 hours before you're brought back before a judge. I don't know yet what has transpired. Obviously, I'm going to have to watch the news just like everyone else. These guys have to be brought back in front of a judge within 72 hours of arrest, so a judge can then review the basic evidence and potentially set a bond. Depending on what the process is in Glenn County, quite often the first judge that you see is a magistrate court judge, or what we call a magistrate court judge sitting with superior court authority. Superior court judges will allow, in certain circumstances, magistrate court judges to set bonds. But murder is one of the 7 deadly sins in Georgia that a magistrate court judge cannot set a bond for. Which means that when these guys get a lawyer, their lawyer is going to have to apply for a bond from a superior court judge. Well, guess what? The courthouses are closed, except that bond issues are considered to be essential. So I think that within the next week, we will probably see that these 2 guys have a lawyer, and the lawyer has applied for bond, and there will be a bond hearing, and I'm sure that unfortunately there will be a media circus involving that. So they can sit, and just because they've applied for a bond doesn't mean that they're going to get a bond, or they'll get a bond, but it'll be a super high bond. So they have the right to apply for the bond, and they actually have a right to obtain a bond unless the judge finds there are certain factors such as they're a threat to witnesses, they're a threat to flee, they're a threat to recommit. These are what are called in Georgia the Ayala factors. And when these 2 guys have their attorney will go in and argue that they're not a threat to society, they're not a threat to influence witnesses, they're not a threat to recidivize, and so they should be given a bond. And that'll be the next big fight in this case that's just beginning. So that's a fantastic question, Cindy, fantastic question. Do we have time? I think we have just a little bit of time to run through that presentation.
One more question.
Oh, we have a question. You know what? Forget the presentation. Let's just answer some questions. You guys have great questions.
All right, so Walter has another question for us. How long do you have to be a resident of Georgia to apply for a carry license?
That's a good question, Walter. How long do you have to be a resident of Georgia to apply for a carry license? So let's think about this. So long as you are a resident, you go to the county in which you are a resident. And only Georgia residents can obtain Georgia weapons carry licenses because you must go to the county in which you reside. If you don't live in Georgia, then you don't have a county that you can apply to. I would think that it's going to depend on extrinsic facts. The facts that you use to prove that you're a Georgia resident. It could be as simple as saying, hey, I'm a Georgia resident, but you got a Florida license. Oh, well, you know what? I just changed over and now I have a Georgia license. Well, do you have a Georgia address? Well, obviously I do because I have a Georgia license. I have a power bill. I have a water bill. This is where I receive my mail. So there are going to be certain extrinsic facts, but key among those is going to be where you declare your residency. I've answered this question sometimes with respect to individuals who own another home. Hey, I have a home in Colorado. I spend half my time there. I have a home in Georgia. Some of the statutes that we have in Georgia addressing firearms issues and other issues deal with residency, and they all sort of fall along the lines of you determine your residency based on where you intend to reside. So I would think that if you come into the state and you have a place to live and you go to the probate court says, all right, show me who you are. And you say, well, this is me, and you present them with an out-of-state license. It's probably going to be hard to prove that that's your residency. So what I would say is once you have the ability to prove that you are a resident of Georgia and you intend on staying here, that's when you're going to be able to at least show to a probate court. So presentation of a driver's license, a water bill, a power bill, things along those lines are going to help to be the proof that you need. But as soon as you can be a resident on day one and go and apply for your weapons carry license. Now here's where it gets interesting. Let's say you are a Florida resident and you move to Georgia. Georgia law will allow you to keep your Florida weapons carry license for up to 90 days. There's a grace period built in so that while you're getting settled in, if you were just visiting, your Florida license would be treated just like a Georgia license, and you would have all the rights and privileges of a Georgia weapons carry license holder. But once you move to Georgia, well, that's not the case. Now, Georgia can't take your Florida weapons carry license. That belongs to Florida. And Florida may very well decide to let you keep it. As a matter of fact, there is a clause in a Georgia statute that I believe would allow you to keep a Georgia license even if you moved away. And that's a topic of a discussion for another day. I may even call Claude and Don and maybe Cherry Henry and bring them on so we can fight about that. But as long as you're not a resident of Georgia, your out-of-state license is okay. Once you become a resident, then your out-of-state license is no longer okay, except that you have 90 days from the date you become a resident to go ahead and obtain your Georgia weapons carry license. So during that 90-day grace period, you're going to be okay. And I've had folks call me and say, well, you know, I've lived here 2 months. You're fine. Go and get your weapons carry license. Had a fella call me 2 or 3 days ago. He said, oh, yeah, I moved here last August. I said, yeah, you're a little outside the time, which means you've got to have a weapons carry license here in Georgia. You got to wait until Georgia courts open back up. Having said all that, even without the license, if you qualified in one state, you're probably going to qualify here in Georgia, which means you're eligible to possess a firearm. And if you're eligible, you don't need a weapons carry license to possess a firearm in your home, in your car, or in your place of business, concealed, openly carried, loaded, or unloaded. Great question, Walter. What else do we have?
All right. That's it for questions, unless anybody has anything else.
That's it for questions. I believe it or not, we are right at an hour. It is 6:52. I was scared to death to go live on the internet, and I've talked for an entire hour.
You sure can fill some time.
You can fill some time. It's because we have good questions. We have folks out there looking out for us and making sure that we say the right things. And if I've said something wrong, I'm sorry. Definitely let me know. Come on next week and let me know. And listen, folks, if you guys have ideas for broadcasts, once we get the hang of this, we're going to be able to do this so much faster. We can do it multiple times a week. I'm always happy to take requests, comments, questions, anything that we can use to build good content is going to be fantastic for us. We may actually end up, once we all get back into the swing of being normal people, we get rid of this and we go back to normal. This is not new normal. I can't stand that term. This is not a new normal. This is us in suspended animation. When we get back to normal, we may actually move the time of the broadcast, because let's face it, 5:56 on a Friday night is not always easy for everybody unless we're all at home and we can't go anywhere. But we'll do more live broadcasts. We have some great podcasts coming. We're looking to do some fantastic stuff with some big YouTubers here very soon.
I was going to say, what are we doing coming up in the next couple of weeks?
We have some
exciting stuff planned.
Yes, we do have some exciting stuff planned. For those of you that are fans of Atlanta Custom Wraps or Do It With Dan, they have 1.25 million followers on YouTube. We're going to be going out here in a couple of weeks with Todd Droege from Go to Firearm Safety and Tactical Martial Arts. We're going to be shooting some exotics, some assault weapons. No, that's the kiss of death when you use that word. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. These are sporting rifles, automatic weapons, folks. We're going to be shooting some exotics. We're gonna be doing some great training videos. We're going to be working with Stoddards down in Atlanta and Douglasville on a host of videos. I'm really looking forward to working with Ken Bay and Mitch and his guys down at Stoddards. Hope to be able to get back out to Venture Outdoor and speak with Don Towers, get him on the phone. We've got just a lot of great stuff coming. So thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. This has been a lot of fun. You may be hard to keep me off the internet from here on out. I don't know. I've got a face for radio, but that's what they say anyway. So good night, everyone. Mariana, do we have anything else we need to tell anybody?
Nothing that's urgent. But if anyone has any exotic firearms that you'd like us to take one for the team and
that's great.
Try out for you. That'd be great.
Come and shoot with us, because I think we need you there anyway with the tax stamp issue. I'd like to thank Getty Wilson. I'd like to thank Rob Burnett. I'd like to thank Georgia Firing Line for allowing us to take up their training room in the back and ask some questions. And we had a great time over at Georgia Firing Line a couple days ago. We've got some great content coming. Thanks, everyone, so much. Come and join us at Recoil, the after party. Look forward to seeing you next week. Good night.
Good night.